And we're back. This time I'm making world peace cookies, a recipe that I got from one of my friends, Krista. Here's the recipe. I'll try to read out the amounts as we go through the ingredients this time, which might be a little more helpful. So I gathered all our ingredients and then I put them into bowls. I decided not to film that part this time. First step is to beat butter until it is smooth and not fluffy. That's 11 tablespoons of butter, which is 1 stick plus 3 tablespoons. And then to that, we're going to add sugars, vanilla, and salt. 2/3 cup brown sugar. 1/4 cup regular sugar. 1/4 teaspoon salt. And then I started the mixer before adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I scraped down my bowl to make sure that everything was incorporated well. And then I'm going to start adding the rest of the dry ingredients. 1 1/4 cup flour, 1/3 cup cocoa powder, and 1/2 teaspoon baking soda. This is a pretty dry dough. There's not a whole lot of liquid ingredients in it. So I tried to do this pretty slowly in order to make sure that it was fully incorporated. Here I am cleaning off the beater. And then I decided to add the chocolate chips by hand because it was so difficult to get it mixed and coming together nicely in the bowl. This worked pretty well. So I added 5 ounces of chocolate chips instead of doing chopped bittersweet chocolate because this is what I had on hand. It was pretty fun to mix this by hand. I recommend it. So next up, I took some cling wrap and separated the dough into 2 halves, roughly, and then formed them into logs by hand. Nice, as you can imagine, brown logs. So I decided to use a knife to kind of get this in half, roughly. And here I am shaping it, trying to get it about 1.5 inches in diameter before I wrap it up and stick it in the fridge. And there we go, first one done. And the second one is essentially the same technique, so I went ahead and sped this up. As you'll be able to see in a moment, I didn't quite get the halves equally sized, but it doesn't really matter in the end. The point of dividing it in half-ish is just to make it easier to form the shape you need it to be. There we go. 2 beautiful brown logs of cookie dough. Delicious. Those went into the fridge for about 3 hours. And here I am preparing the cookie sheets for baking. Per the recipe, I did use parchment paper this time, and it, as you'll see later, was a very good decision. Grabbing a cutting board and knife, I went ahead and cut each of the cookie dough logs into approximately 1/2 inch rounds and put those straight onto the baking sheet to bake at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about 11 to 12 minutes. I did find the dough to be a little bit crumbly, especially around where the chocolate chips were. So when I was putting them onto the tray, I kind of, squished the bits that fell off back into cookies as I felt like it. The rounds in the middle of the log were very pretty looking, as you can see. They kind of look like giant chocolate salamis. Here I am kind of squishing the dough back together. It baked fine, it wasn't an issue. The poor little cookie on the end was so small, I felt bad for it. So I gave it the rest of the little crumbs. Time for the second log, much of the same. Cut it into half-inch rounds, place it on the sheet, rearrange the sheet as many times as you need to. I sped that up because I did end up rearranging the cookies a lot to try to, space them evenly, have an even number on each tray. And here they are ready to be baked. 11 minutes later, here is the first tray of baked cookies. Tried to show it to the camera, but didn't do a great job. That's okay. They were really good and very, very chocolatey. So if you like chocolate, this is a good recipe for you. After they cooled a while, I went ahead and moved them to the cooling rack. I would recommend waiting quite a few minutes before doing this because I didn't wait long enough with the second tray and they did start to fall apart, which was a little sad. It still tasted fine though, so that's what matters to me. The parchment paper definitely made it easy to remove the cookies from it, but it was very slippery on the baking sheet. So I did have some struggles with that, but what's baking without some struggles? Am I right? Had to get creative here. It's just not refusing to get on top of that spatula. In comes a trusty spoon. Not a bad solution, I must say. Next up, throw the parchment paper in the trash. Or reuse it if you have another tray of cookies to bake. And here comes our second tray of baked cookies. Let me know what you thought of this recipe if you try it out yourself. Thank you again for watching my videos. See you next time.